Let's go on the record. This is an evidentiary hearing before the Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission in a cause docketed before the Commission as cause number 45955, captioned as the petition of Marysville-Otisco-Nabb Water Corporation, 1, for authority and approval to increase rates and charges for water service, including approval of new schedules of rates and charges for water services. 2, for authority and approval to issue bonds, notes, and other obligations of indebtedness. Notice of the time and place of the hearing was given as provided by law by publication in Marion County in the Indianapolis Star on January 12, 2024, and in Clark County in the News and Tribune on January 11, 2024. These are newspapers of general circulation, and the publications were made at least 10 days prior to the date of the evidentiary hearing. The proofs of publication of the notices have been received by the Commission and are now incorporated into the record of this cause by reference and placed in the official files of the Commission. Notice has also been given to the Indiana Office of Utility Consumer Counselor and other interested parties. May we have appearances, please?
Thank you, Your Honor. For the Marysville-Otisco-Nabb Water Corporation, Darren Craig, Cameron Trackman, and Matthew Duncan of Frost Brown Todd LLP.
Thank you, Your Honor. For the public, Dan LeVay, Adam Cashin, and Victor Peters of the OUCC.
Thank you. Mr. Craig, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. With Your Honor's permission, we'd like to begin with the introduction of our exhibits.
Yes.
Thank you. And Your Honor, would Your Honor and the Commissioner like copies of those as we offer them as well? I assume. Okay. We have copies, of course, for opposing counsel for Your Honors as well.
Okay. Let's go off the record for a moment. Do you want to just distribute the copies and then we can go on and offer
Perhaps
them?
that would be most efficient.
We just need one at the bench. I don't know if staff in the back would like any.
Thank you.
Me too. Okay. Okay,
Close
let's go
enough?
back on the record.
Thank
Mr.
you, Your
Craig.
Honor. Petitioner would now like to offer as Exhibit 1 the pre-filed direct testimony of Jerome Hentrop. Petitioner also offers as Exhibit 2 the pre-filed direct testimony of Robert Bellucci and exhibits. Petitioner offers as Exhibit 3 the pre-filed direct testimony of Tracy Wynn and exhibits. Petitioner offers as Exhibit 4 the pre-filed testimony of Eric Smith and exhibits. Petitioner offers as Exhibit 5 the pre-filed rebuttal testimony of Eric Smith and exhibits. Petitioner offers as Exhibit 6 the pre-filed rebuttal testimony of Tracy Wynn and exhibits. Petitioner offers as Exhibit 7 the pre-filed supplemental rebuttal testimony of Eric Smith and exhibits. Finally, petitioner offers as Exhibit 8 the pre-filed supplemental rebuttal testimony of Tracy Wynn and exhibits.
Any objections?
Your Honor, we have no objections, and we've waived cross-examination of all of the witnesses except for Mr. Smith.
Okay. With that, petitioners' exhibits 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 are admitted into evidence. Mr. Craig, you may call your first witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. Petitioner calls Eric Smith for purposes of cross-examination.
Thank you. Mr. Smith? Mr. Smith, could you please stand and raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you will provide in this cause will be the truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. You may be seated. And yes, you will want that microphone right in front of you so that we can hear you. Mr. Craig.
Thank you, Your Honor.
We've already petitioners already offered and accepted into evidence Mr. Smith's testimony that was pre-filed in this cause. So with that, Mr. LeVay, would you like to conduct your cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor, thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Smith.
Morning.
I'm Dan LeVay, I'm with the OUCC. I have just some questions about your testimony. You have filed 3 sets of testimony in this case, correct?
Yes,
And all 3 of them are in front of you?
that is correct.
Okay, you filed your first set of testimony on March 16th? I'm sorry, February 16th?
Yes,
And then a month later on March 15th?
yes,
And that was the supplemental testimony. Then finally, you filed rebuttal supplemental testimony on June 27th.
that is correct.
Okay. When were you first engaged to prepare testimony in this case?
We were retained by the Water Corporation in December of 2023 to help take over a project that had been started by another consultant. As part of that, we were updating and revising the preliminary engineering report for potential funding.
So you were engaged, now when you say to work on a project, what project was that?
The project that was selected or that was recommended in a preliminary engineering report.
Which was? Describe the project.
A 300,000 gallon water storage tank and an 8-inch water main loop.
When you were engaged in December of 2023, was it your understanding that you would be filing rebuttal?
Yeah. It was my understanding that I knew what the Water Corporation was in the midst of a rate case, and we knew that we would be involved.
Okay. Did you know that you were going to be filing rebuttal, your firm?
Yes.
Was it your understanding at that time that Mr. Bellucci was not going to be filing rebuttal?
I don't know the answer to that.
Did you work with Mr. Bellucci at all on this case?
No, I did not.
Did you ever have any conversations with Mr. Bellucci?
I did not.
And one of the things you did is you took over his hydraulic modeling.
We developed our own hydraulic model.
You didn't rely at all on Mr. Bellucci's hydraulic modeling?
We did not.
Okay. One of the things that you were engaged to do was to correct deficiencies in that hydraulic model?
We reviewed the model and found deficiencies, and in the end, developed our own model by doing hydrant tests of the system based on the deficiencies we saw in the model.
What kind of tests?
Hydrant tests
What does that involve?
involves putting gauges on hydrants to measure flows and pressures. Those are used to develop and calibrate a water model.
And the results of those tests, do those appear anywhere in your testimonies?
I believe they are in attachments to those, yes.
Now, the attachments, now looking at your testimony there, are those attachments, is your testimony there, does that include all the attachments to your testimony?
It does appear so. I am seeing model results, although I'm not seeing the hydrant test results.
Okay, now when you say you looked at what was the name of the firm that Mr. Bellucci worked for? Commonwealth?
Yes, it was, I believe.
And you looked at their results of their model,
Yes.
but you did not look at the actual model itself?
No, we were provided the model.
We're provided the model.
Yes.
Now, but you did not talk to Mr. Bellucci about that model?
No, we did not.
Now, when you say that you're provided the model, what does that mean? What do you have that you can look at?
It means we were provided the software that shows the model that was developed by the other firm.
Okay. Was that proprietary, that model?
The software is, the model itself is not.
Okay.
I don't believe.
Is the software that's used for your model proprietary?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Did you have to sign any agreement when you looked at Commonwealth's model?
I believe there was a release that was signed by the Water Corporation, and I don't recall if we signed one or not. I don't recall.
Okay. Now, one of the things that Mr. Parks pointed out in his supplemental testimony in response to your supplemental testimony was that the model you used did not use the 300,000-gallon elevated water storage tank that was proposed.
Originally, our model did not, because we were being consistent with the values that were modeled in the PER. When we did the final modeling, we did use the 300,000-gallon size.
What do you mean by values?
Volumes of storage.
Volumes.
Yes.
Of storage. You're being consistent. Now, weren't you engaged to correct deficiencies in that model?
We were engaged not to correct deficiencies in the model. We were correcting deficiencies in the PER so that it could be submitted for funding.
Well, you performed your own model, correct?
Correct.
And you performed a model that did not use the 300,000 gallon storage tank that's been requested for financing in this case.
In the end, we did.
In the end, you did. In the end, you did that after, as of the time that you filed your rebuttal supplemental testimony?
Correct.
Okay, and that was after the OUCC had conducted its review?
Correct.
And why did you decide to do so at that juncture?
The volume of the tank has little effect, if any, on the model itself, and we were being consistent with the values that were modeled previously in the PER. When it was volumes.
Okay. Then why did you change? Why did you then use a 300,000 gallon tank in your rebuttal case?
Because it was stated in the response from the OUCC that that volume was not modeled, and then we modeled it.
Why do you need to be consistent with a model when you're performed by another firm, when you're performing your own model?
I can't answer that, but we were just trying to be consistent with what was in the study that had already been submitted.
Well, if the study had used, for instance, line diameters that were inaccurate, would you have continued to use that?
No, we would not.
Okay. But why, a 3,000 gallon storage tank is not accurate, correct? Let me rephrase that. Let me withdraw that question. A 300,000 gallon storage tank is what's planned, correct?
Correct.
And so it would have been accurate to use a 300,000 gallon storage tank when you initially performed your study.
Correct. But if you understand modeling, the volume of the tank has no value on the model that you're doing.
The volume of the tank does not affect water pressure?
The high water level of the tank is what has a direct impact on water pressure.
Is that true regardless of the size of the tank?
Yes.
What is the high water level of the tanks Commonwealth used?
I don't know.
Well, to be consistent, wouldn't you have to know that?
The high water level of the tank that was proposed in the PER and the high water level of the tanks that we modeled, regardless of the size, were the same.
What was that level?
I don't recall.
Would you have input that when you did your analysis?
Yes.
You had no way of verifying that Commonwealth used those same water levels?
Based on the model, yes, we could verify that that was the level they used.
Because you looked at the software and how those had been run through?
Yes.
The data. So what do you look at when you're looking at their model?
Generally, you're looking at sizes of water mains, you're looking at flow tests, pressures. A model has a static condition when there's no flow demands, and you're trying to verify that the static conditions match the system, because a model is only as good as it is in reflecting the true conditions of a water system. So calibrating the model is important.
Okay. So now you've said that the size of the water storage tank doesn't matter. It really is a function of the level of the water.
Correct.
Okay. The diameter of the lines that are depicted in this study, those do matter.
Definitely.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
Yes, let's go off the record for a moment.
approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, let's go back on the record. Mr. LeVay?
Thank you. Mr. Smith, I've asked the court reporter to put in front of you 4 cross-examination exhibits, and I'll ask you, do you recognize cross-examination exhibit 1 as Marysville's response to a data request?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And did you participate in preparing this response to the data request?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And what's included in this data request is attachment, or the response to 10-1, which has been marked as cross-examination exhibit 2. Can you take a look at cross-examination exhibit 2? Have you looked at cross-examination exhibit 2, Mr. Smith? Okay. And then I'll ask you to look at cross-examination exhibit 3. Do you recognize cross-examination exhibit 3?
Yes.
One moment, Your Honor. Cross-examination exhibit 2. Those include as-built drawings?
Yes, it does.
Okay. And I'll ask you to look more particularly at drawings numbers 2, 3, and 4 of those. Could you take a moment to look at those?
I see a drawing 2. I don't see a 3 and a 4. Based on the sheet numbers.
Well, it's not based on the sheet number, but in terms of the order of the documents that are in front of you. Could you look at the second one, the third one, and the fourth one?
Okay.
Okay. Now, can you tell from looking at that the size of the mains that were placed or built?
Four-inch.
Okay. And so these show a 4-inch diameter PVC SDR 26 water main on the Charleston-Memphis Road, correct?
Yes.
And it shows a 2-inch service line on Whitting Hill Road.
Yes.
Okay. Now I'll ask you to look at cross-examination exhibit number 3. Now, these are design drawings, correct?
It appears so. It's faded. I can't tell you what they're stated as.
Okay. You can't tell if you do not recognize these as design drawings?
I can't tell you if they're design drawings or as-built because I can't tell if the note is on there, it says they're as-built or not.
Okay. You recognize these. If you go to the, you participated in responding to this data request. Do you recognize these documents as what was provided in response to OUCC data request 10-1?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do these sheets show the size of the design on the design drawings for Fox Road and Whitting Road, for the Whitting water main extension?
I believe they do.
Okay. And you'll agree with me that they show a 4-inch along Whitting Road and Fox Road?
I can't see that physically myself.
Let me ask you to turn to the next page, the second page on that. And do you recognize that drawing, that design drawing, as Fox Road?
Yes, I do see Fox Road noted.
And then on the upper part of the drawing, it shows Whitting Road?
I cannot tell.
Okay. Let me ask you to look at the upper left-hand corner. May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes, let's go off the record for a moment.
I'm sorry, I can't read it.
Let's go back on the record.
Did you rely on these as-built drawings?
We relied on records that the Water Corporation had. The records that they had consist of these drawings and other maps to prepare an updated map of the system.
Okay.
This was one document of others that we relied upon.
Okay. And these are the. Did you provide us, in response to this question, documents that are less legible than the ones you relied upon?
Can you repeat the question?
Well, we asked you to provide us the as-built drawings, and you said you relied on the documents of the utility. Did you rely on as-built drawings?
Relied on as-built drawings plus the existing maps that they have recorded over the years, plus the operator's knowledge of what water main sizes. A lot of times that's all small water companies have because their records are faded and in poor condition. The operator's knowledge is the best use to determine what the water main sizes are in systems like this.
Okay. Did you rely on these as-built drawings?
To some degree.
Okay. Even though you can't read them?
I'm sure there are others that could read them other than me. My eyesight is not the best.
Okay. Can you see if I show you very faintly, it shows a 4-inch water main up in the upper left-hand corner?
On which sheet?
On the sheet, the last sheet we were looking at, the second page. It says proposed 4-inch water main. You see where it says?
I faintly see that.
Okay, you do see that. Did someone besides you review these maps?
Yes,
Okay, who was that?
I have a staff of engineers that are working on this project.
Okay. And would it have been important to note the design and the as-built, the size of the main?
Absolutely.
Okay. Can we go to number 4, which cross-examination exhibit number 4. Can you identify from this where Whitting Road is?
No, I cannot.
Well, Whitting Road runs into Fox Road, correct?
Yes,
Okay, and Fox Road curves.
yes,
Okay, and so that curve on that red line that curves, that's Fox Road.
yes,
Okay, and Whitting Road and also there's a yellow bit of Fox Road too, correct?
yes,
So Fox Road is marked as a 2-inch and as a 4-inch, correct?
correct.
Okay. Now you've also got, then would you agree that, excuse me, the green line is Whitting Road?
Yes.
And what is Whitting Road marked as?
Appears to be 3-inch.
Okay. Is that consistent with what the design drawings and as-built drawings are?
If it's CX3, I cannot confirm that.
Well, you did say that you could faintly read 4-inch. When I asked you if you could identify where it says 4-inch, proposed 4-inch main, you said you could.
I cannot verify that it is this section that is shown as a 3-inch.
Okay, would you take a look at those maps and
Again, I can't see Venning Road on here, on these old maps.
may I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes, let's go off the record for a moment.
Well, let me ask you, Your Honor, may we go
Mr.
back on the
LeMay.
record?
Yes, let's go back on the record.
Mr. Smith, do you recognize from the second page of cross-examination exhibit 3, there's a drawing up top, and there's a road indicated in the middle of that page. Do you see that?
Yes.
Do you recognize the drawing in the middle of the page as the yellow road, yellow part of Fox Road?
Yes.
Okay. Would you agree that the yellow part of Fox Road is indicated as a 2-inch water main on the colored map?
Yes, it appears so.
And do you, may I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes, you may. Let's go off the record for a moment.
Faint.
Let's go back on the record. Mr. LeVay?
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Smith, you recognize that the center drawing as Fox Road, and it's the yellow part,
Yes.
okay? And I showed you up there 2 locations on there, and could you confirm that it says proposed 4-inch water main?
It does say proposed 4-inch water main.
And can you look at that on cross-examination Exhibit 2 and tell me if the as-built show a 4-inch water main for that part of Fox Road? I withdraw that question. Now, you indicated a 2-inch line at that location where the as-builts show a 4-inch line. What investigation did you do to determine that was a 2-inch line, or whether it was a 2-inch line?
We did not say these were as-builts.
I'm sorry, design drawings. You're correct. These were presented as design drawings. You looked at these design drawings, however.
We looked at these design drawings and met with the operator.
Okay? And what information did you rely on to determine that these were 2-inch lines?
Generally, we relied on working with the operator and the Water Corporation staff to verify the mapping that we put together. Oftentimes, water main sizes are changed from design to construction due to funding.
Well, you said you did it to verify. So if you're verifying, that means you bring them a 2-inch line and say, is this correct? So what made you think it was a 2-inch line to begin with?
I don't know the answer to that.
Your Honor, I'd like to offer into evidence cross-examination exhibits 1 through 4.
Any objections?
No objection, Your Honor.
Thank you. Then OUCC cross-examination exhibits 1, 2, 3, and 4 are admitted into evidence.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, we may have a brief recess.
Yes, let's go off the record for a moment. Are we ready to go back on the record?
Yes, Your Honor, thank you.
Okay, let's go back on the record then.
Mr. Smith, let's move to a different area. Could you go to Exhibit C to your March 15th, 2024 supplemental testimony?
Yes.
Exhibit C addresses the Table 1, the 8-inch loop alternative. First of all, what is your understanding of what a loop is?
A loop is a water main that connects two larger sources of supply in a water system.
Okay. Why do they call that a loop?
Because often it eliminates dead ends.
What,
In this case, that is not why it's called a loop, but it's a common term that's used in water distribution systems.
okay. The 8-inch loop alternative that you've got on Exhibit C, would you agree that Commonwealth showed the cost of this project to be $4,411,100?
Yes.
Okay. Can you explain why, when you filed your supplemental testimony, that the cost of the project had gone up to $6,997,216?
Yes. In today's volatile construction market, we have current bid data, and we looked at the numbers that they had in the preliminary engineering report, and we thought they were low. In today's day, with supply chains and inflation, we're seeing costs much higher. So we did increase the size of those since it was what was going to be submitted for funding.
Well, and ultimately in your PER, you're not sticking with that estimate, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And what is the estimate you're currently proposing? Let me just, while you're looking for that, it's less than what Commonwealth had estimated, correct?
Yes, it is.
And go ahead and tell me what that amount is.
I believe it's $3,555,000 for construction.
Okay. What changed?
Time, and we talked with some local contractors to firm up unit prices. The construction industry prices are changing daily.
Your Honor, I have some questions that the witness may need to look at Mr. Park's testimony. So I would ask the court reporter to offer Mr. Parks, or take Mr. Parks' supplemental testimony over to the witness.
Okay, let's go off the record for a moment then. Let's go back on the record.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Smith, we've put Mr. Parks' supplemental testimony in front of there because you're responding to that. But I'd like you to look at OUCC attachment JTP-22, page 5 of 46. So it's an attachment, so it should be near the end. It's the 22nd attachment.
Can you repeat the JTP?
Yeah, 22.
Did you say 22?
Yes, sir.
It stops at 10.
Is it step at 10?
Let's go off the record for a moment.
Well, no, he had a supplemental. He just didn't have. It's in 2 parts.
Let's go back on the record.
Mr. Smith, thank you. It's JTP-22. It's in the second half of Mr. Parks' testimony. Have you found that exhibit, that attachment?
Yes.
Okay, and asked you to go to page 5 of 46.
Okay.
And this shows the modeling of system pressures.
Yes.
And this is a revision to the PER, correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay, and so what was initially in table ES-2 were the results of the study performed by Commonwealth.
Correct.
Thank you. And would you agree that for the average daily demand pressures that it's essentially doubled from what Commonwealth estimated using their model?
Not exactly.
Well, if I said near doubling,
Yes.
okay, a significant difference.
Yes.
The same thing with the peak daily demand pressures. Would you agree
Yes.
those essentially doubled or
It
more?
varies, but yes, they are higher.
Okay. And again, you'd say significantly higher. And if you would look at the next page, which is 6 of 46.
Yes.
And, one question I have on this, on the next page, you had the words Charlestown emergency is what Commonwealth had in there describing the connection. And you changed that to Indiana American Water 8-inch water main loop. Do you see that change?
Yes.
Was that significant?
No, because Indiana American bought Charlestown Water, so Charlestown Water does not exist. That's why we made the change.
Why? But Why didn't you call it the Indiana American Emergency Connection?
Because that is the supplier.
No, I'm saying you cross out the words emergency.
Correct.
Why did you cross out the word emergency?
Because it's not an emergency connection. It's one of several connections that the water company would have with Indiana American and its other suppliers, Stuck or Fork.
Okay. Well, in this initial PER, it was an emergency connection?
I can't tell you why they called it that.
Well, did you read Mr. Bellucci's testimony?
I did.
And he said that this was needed for emergencies, emergency loss of pressure, and due to if Stuck or Fork were to go offline.
I don't recall.
Now, for your average daily demand and peak daily demand, you're showing pressures of 222 as the top of the range.
That's what it shows, yes.
Okay. Is that if I had 222 pressure in my house, should I be concerned?
Yes, you should.
Okay. Should I be concerned if the water going into my house is 222 PSI?
Yes. These results were before we had the model completely refined and calibrated.
So you gave us a model for our review before these were completely refined and recalibrated?
We did supplemental additional testing.
Okay, and when did you do that supplemental addition testing?
I do not recall the date.
Okay, was it after you filed your supplemental testimony?
I don't recall.
Did you include revised results in your rebuttal testimony?
Yes, we did.
Okay, and tell me where those are in your rebuttal testimony.
Results from our most current model was in the June 27th filing.
Yeah, where?
Excuse me?
Where was that in your June 27th filing?
Pages 4 and 5. Those are parts of the overall updated modeling.
Does this show all the alternatives?
When you say all, what do you mean?
Well, you show 4 alternatives on the PER. Alternatives 1 through 4. Correct? Pages 4 of 46, pages 5 of 46. I'm sorry, 6 of 46 and 5 of 46.
Are you switching documents?
Well, I'm going back to the document in Mr. Park's testimony that you were just looking at. Mr. Smith, let me rephrase the question that you found the parts in pages 5 of 46.
Yes,
Okay. It shows 4 alternatives.
it does.
Okay. And page 4 of your supplemental rebuttal testimony shows average daily demand and peak daily demand of 2 alternatives, a 6-inch BPS discharge line and a 12-inch BPS discharge line. So these 2 alternatives you list on page 4 are not the same alternatives in the PER?
No, they're not.
Okay.
There are many alternatives that you can evaluate in a model.
Right. But you'd agree that these 4 alternatives that are shown in the PER do not appear in your testimony?
That's correct.
Okay. So how would I know from your supplemental rebuttal testimony, or how would Mr. Parks know, that your modeling showing 31-222 applies or no longer applies, for instance?
From follow-up testimony.
Okay, and is that in your follow-up testimony?
I believe so.
And show me where. And the follow-up testimony would have been your rebuttal, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Filed testimony on June 27th, page 4. Part B.
Well, Part B refers to the table below that, which says system pressure based on supply by booster pump station only, correct?
But it also says we developed additional modeling analyses.
Right, but you've indicated they're different, but you haven't indicated what they are, correct?
It's in our attached exhibits.
Okay. Can you show me where it is in your attached exhibits? You're talking about exhibits A, B, or C are your attached exhibits, correct?
Part of our analysis is shown in Exhibit C, but I would agree it doesn't demonstrate all of the modeling results.
Okay.
If you're familiar with water models, it is very difficult to provide results because the data it provides, it can provide mountains of data like this. So to provide something that is concise and simple, it really depends on what you're looking for.
Well, you provided concise and simple data in your supplemental testimony, did you not?
We did.
Does it not include this table here, if I can show you?
It does.
Okay. And
But we were not asked to provide a rebuttal or updated information for that.
well, you were responding to Mr. Park's testimony,
That is correct.
and you saw that it was appropriate to include the Charlestown Emergency Connection Modeling System pressures in your supplemental case that showed a peak daily demand of 31 to 222 PSI, for instance, but you did not see fit to provide this document revised once it had been revised?
No, we did not.
Okay, thank you. And can we go to page 7 of your supplemental rebuttal, Mr. Smith?
Which date, please?
Well, the supplemental rebuttal is June 27th.
Page what?
Pardon?
Page what?
Oh, page 7.
Okay.
And on page 7, you're answering the question, what are your recommendations regarding the 8-inch water main loop?
Yes, sir.
And then you list benefits.
Yes.
At the bottom of page 7, you list as a benefit, provide 100% emergency supply from Indiana American in case of extended Stucker Fork outage, as well as improve the supplemental supply that allows for future growth.
Correct.
Then you say, while it's understood this redundancy is not a requirement, it is certainly supported by regulatory agencies as good practice and service measures by utilities.
Yes.
Is it your position that water utilities should have a 100% backup supply?
100% is not necessary and not always the case. Having a secondary supply is good. When you add the 100% in there, it becomes difficult to support.
When you say the benefit is to provide a 100% emergency supply from Indiana American, you agree that that is not something that is required?
No, but I'm saying it's a benefit of the alternative, which it is.
Do you agree that in considering what the benefits, you should also consider the costs before a project is
We always do.
okay. Are you aware of the Indiana? Well, let me back up. You said it is certainly supported by regulatory agencies as good practice and service measures by utilities. Can you provide me a site where a regulatory agency advocates 100% emergency supply?
Again, when you use the term 100%, it becomes difficult. The regulatory agencies always support a secondary supply in case of contamination, loss of supply.
Well, Marysville already has 4 connections, correct?
Yes, but the ones that exist within the American are limited in what they can provide.
By limited, you mean they can't provide 100% emergency supply?
Correct.
Now, let me understand what you're saying here. While it is understood this redundancy is not a requirement, when you say that on the bottom of page 7 and the top of page 8, This redundancy, are you referring to a 100% emergency supply?
No, I'm saying a redundant supply. I didn't say 100% in it.
Okay. You don't mean to say, when you say this redundancy, you're not referring to a 100% emergency supply?
No.
So you agree that 100% emergency supply is not supported by regulatory agencies as good practice?
No, I'm saying a secondary supply is supported.
And right now, you've got a secondary, a tertiary, and I don't know the word for fourth emergency supply.
Yes, but as I said, several of these are limited, and if Stucker Fork was not able to supply them, having another connection would support the system.
Now, you talk about good practice and service measures by regulatory agencies. Are you familiar with Indiana Code 812-0.5, operation and maintenance affordability of utility services?
Not specifically.
I'm going to read the statute to you. It's fairly short. And I want to ask for your opinion about something. It says the General Assembly declares that it is the continuing policy of the state, in cooperation with local governments and other concerned public and private organizations, to use all practicable means and measures, including financial and technical assistance, in a manner calculated to create and maintain conditions under which utilities plan for and invest in infrastructure necessary for operation and maintenance, while protecting the affordability of utility services for present and future generations of Indiana citizens. Do you see that? Have you ever heard that before?
Yes.
And would you agree with me that what is being directed by the General Assembly is that utilities perform a cost-benefit analysis and figure out before they spend money that ratepayers will have to pay back through their rates, that a decision be made whether something is truly needed?
Absolutely.
I want to object that this is calling for a legal interpretation of a statute from a technical expert who is not trained in law.
Well, Your Honor, if I may just respond, the witness said that redundancy is supported by regulatory agencies as good practice and service measures by utilities. I'm not going to linger on this, but I think it's a fair question in light of his testimony.
I'll overrule the objection.
Would you agree with me, Mr. Smith, that it is very unusual for a utility to have a 100% emergency backup supply?
Perhaps.
You know, of the 700 water utilities in the state, how many have 100% backup supply?
100%? No. I do not know how many do.
We go to page 5 of your supplemental rebuttal testimony. Can you explain to me what that table is in the bottom of page 5?
It's showing the original model versus the model our firm created and the assumptions that were used in developing the model.
Okay. And I noticed that you have the average customer meter demand. That's uniform between the original model and the HWC model.
Yes, sir.
And why is that?
Because it's a recognized number value.
And who recognizes that number?
Consulting engineers that run models.
Now, I'm going to ask you to go to page 7 of your supplemental testimony, lines 23 through 25.
Which line, sir?
Oh, lines 23 through 25. I'm sorry, 123 through 125.
Okay.
And you say this table shows the available pressure within Hawks Landing with an inserted local note imposing a 250 GPM demand. And when you say, you mean node?
Should be node.
Node, okay. But I want to focus on the 250 gallons per minute. Is 250 gallons per minute a future demand from new customers, such as from a new subdivision?
No, sir. 250 gallon per minute demand is an arbitrary number. What we were trying to show was the benefit of the 8-inch loop during higher demands and how it would reduce pressure drops in that area of the system, which this table demonstrates.
Okay, but how, it's arbitrary, but it affects your results, does it not?
Yes, sir. The number could have been 150. It could have been 300. What we're trying to show is under a higher usage, there's going to be pressure drops. Having the loop in place reduces those pressure drops.
Okay, but if you're evaluating whether it makes sense from a cost-benefit analysis standpoint to install infrastructure in a location of the utility's operations, correct?
Yes, sir.
Well, shouldn't you be using a realistic number?
250 gallons per minute is a realistic number.
I thought you said it was arbitrary.
It's arbitrary and realistic.
What makes it realistic?
It's less than a fire flow.
Is there anything else that makes it realistic?
Generally, it's a demand you could see in a system.
It's okay. Is it a demand you would expect to see in this system?
You could.
Okay, and have you did an analysis as to what this system is likely to demand?
Right here, we did.
And so you input 250, but you said that was arbitrary.
It is arbitrary, yes.
Okay, so why didn't you use a demand that is based on what this utility could expect based on growth and where development can occur?
250 gallons per minute could assimilate those. When you're doing modeling, when you do water modeling, you can use demands of different values. That's how you determine effects of a water system.
Okay, so you're looking at whether it's good enough, not whether it's too good.
No, I would disagree with that.
Okay, well, if their demand based on customer growth and how much customer growth they can expect and where they can develop and other factors with the system, if 250 gallons per minute demand is overstated, that would suggest that something should be built when perhaps it's not necessary.
I think the 250 gallons per minute could be defensible based on a certain number of homes that would be developed.
Okay, how many homes would be developed?
I'd have to run some numbers.
Okay, and fair to say that in using 250 gallons per minute, you'd have not run the numbers.
No, we were, as I said, using an arbitrary number that is reasonable and realistic to demonstrate the effect, the positive effect this water main has on the system.
Okay, and when you say it's reasonable and realistic, you're not taking a position on whether it's reasonable or realistic for this utility to have that need.
I think it is, yes.
Based on what?
Based on a certain number of homes and development that could be using water at that given time.
Okay, and how many, and you say you did not know what the homes are. So how can you tell me that it's realistic?
Based on past experience.
Well, is your past experience based on other utilities?
Yes, it is.
Okay, but not this one.
This one as well.
Okay, what's your past experience related to this utility that causes you to think that 250 gallons per minute?
We have not tested for demands. In order to determine a demand, you'd have to open a hydrant.
Well, I'm talking about future development.
That can be calculated. And again, a 250 gallon per minute demand is realistic.
Let me ask you, is a 250 gallons per minute, is that average or peak?
That would be average.
Okay. If we put Mr. Bellucci's testimony in front of you, or the Commonwealth Professional Energy Report, can you point out where Mr. Bellucci discusses Hawks Landing subdivision and the 250 gallon per minute demand?
Where is it?
It's not in front of you. But do you think that would be useful for you? I wanted to ask you before I asked the court reporter to put it in front of you.
No, it wouldn't be, because we found inaccuracies in their model. That's why we developed our own.
Okay, so you don't know whether Mr. Bellucci, so you put in the 250?
Yes, I said we did.
Can you, anywhere in your supplemental rebuttal testimony, can you point to me where in either that or your supplemental testimony or in HWC's revised PER, you discuss the Hawks Landing subdivision and the 250 gallon per minute demand?
It's in the June 27th filing.
Okay, what about those other locations?
No, I do not believe so.
Okay. Do you discuss where the 250 gallon per minute demand's location is?
It's in the model. I don't know exactly where we imposed it. We imposed it near Hawks Landing to show the effect of having that 8-inch line, of how it would benefit existing customers.
Turn to page 5 of your supplemental rebuttal testimony. Now, that states you have an average customer demand of 0.1397 gallons per minute.
Correct.
Okay, and now we discussed that number. It's a number that is typically used. Based on that value, what is the average usage per customer in gallons per day?
You have a calculator?
Yes. May we approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
It's 200, sir.
Okay. And to do that, you multiplied 0.1397 times 1,440
Yes, sir.
minutes. Okay. Your Honor, can I ask the court reporter to put Mr. Bellucci's testimony in front of the witness?
Let's go off the record for a moment. While we're off the record, Mr. LeVay, can you give me an estimate of how much longer
We're almost done, Your Honor. I think this is the last line of questioning.
And for purposes of redirect?
I would estimate redirect of no more than 15 minutes, Your Honor.
Yeah.
Let's go back on the record.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Smith, could you go to the Commonwealth PER?
What page?
Page 3 through 6, I'm going to be asking you about. 3-6. Mr. Smith, based on page 3-6 of the Commonwealth PER, what is the existing daily demand?
For the system,
Yes.
427,000 gallons per day.
Okay. And what is the existing number of residential customers?
2,479.
And what are the projected future connections through or to 2043?
508.
Okay. And what is the daily demand from 250 gallons per minute?
Are you going back to that modeling analysis?
I'm just asking you what, I guess I don't understand your clarifying question.
Why are you asking about 250 gallons per minute?
Do you know the answer?
No.
Well, I'm just asking you to calculate what 250 gallons per minute would equate to in a day.
It would be a high number.
Okay, would it be two?
A lower number, such as 100 gallons per minute in that modeling analysis that we just referred, would have given similar results and shown the positive impact of the 8-inch main.
Well, you would multiply 250 gallons per minute times 1,440 minutes per day?
Correct.
And subject to check, would you agree that's 360,000 gallons per day?
Without doing the math, I'm going to trust you calculated it correctly.
Well, go ahead and use the calculator. Please.
Correct.
Okay. And would you agree, subject to check, that 360,000 gallons per day is 84% of the existing average day demand of 427,000?
Correct. But it could simulate a leak, a hydrant being opened.
Understood. How many new residential customers cause a future demand increase of 250 gallons per minute, which is equivalent to 360,000 gallons per day?
Again, the 250 gallons per minute was an arbitrary number.
Okay, but we want to understand what it means. So could you do that calculation for us?
State it again, please.
How many new residential customers would cause a future demand increase of 250 gallons per minute, equivalent to 360,000 gallons per day?
$1,800.
You're rounding up?
Yes.
Okay.
What
was the actual
That's
number?
based on 200 gallons per day per user, which there are numbers that can vary for that. I've seen it as high as 310.
And would you agree with me that 1,800 new residential customers or 1,790 new residential customers is 72% of the existing 2,479 residential customers?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. I have no more questions.
Redirect.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Smith, you were asked at the beginning of your cross-examination this morning about HWC's engagement by Marysville-Otisco-Nabb Water Corporation in December 2023. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And was part of that engagement to review the preliminary engineering report prepared by Commonwealth?
Yes, sir, it was.
And HWC did that?
Yes.
Was part of HWC's engagement also to determine whether Commonwealth's project recommendations were appropriate for the Water Corporation's needs?
Correct.
And what conclusion did HWC reach?
The conclusion was that the recommended project was valid and was recommended for this system. We did disagree with some of the supporting documentation, but yes, the project as a whole was agreed upon.
During your conversation with Mr. LeVay, you were asked about modeling of certain aspects of the modeling and whether a 300,000 gallon tank was used in that modeling. Do you recall that?
Yes, I do.
And I believe you testified that ultimately HWC performed modeling with using an assumption of a 300,000 gallon tank.
Yes, we did.
Did the modeling using the 300,000 gallon tank materially change the earlier modeling your firm had done?
No, it did not.
Did the modeling with the 300,000 gallon tank change any of the conclusions your firm reached?
No, it did not.
You were asked some questions about cross-examination Exhibit 3, which is one of the larger format documents in the stack before you. And looking at those documents, do you know whether those are design drawings or as-built drawings?
No, I do not.
And I believe you had identified them as either design drawings or as-built?
Yes, there were two sets. One did say as-built. That was a different exhibit. Yeah.
Speaking specifically about cross-examination Exhibit 3.
It does not state.
Do design drawings always reflect the final infrastructure that's actually built?
No, they do not.
And what, besides looking at the drawings that we've reviewed today, could you explain to the commission again what actions you took to confirm the water main size and other details of Marysville-Otisco-Nabb's water system?
Our staff met with the operator and the utility staff, actually went out in the field, verified parts of the system so we could update the mapping, because some of the mapping that was in the original PER was inaccurate.
You were asked a question about a reference to the Charlestown emergency water supply. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do.
And you explained that you that your firm had changed the name from Charlestown to Indiana American Water because Charlestown was no longer the water utility. Is that correct?
Correct.
Objection, Your Honor. Leading question.
Overruled.
Now, with respect to the reference to emergency connection, is Marysville-Otisco-Nabb Water Corporation able to purchase water on an emergency basis from Indiana American Water?
Yes, they are.
And have there been situations where Indiana American Water was the water corporation's emergency supplier?
Yes.
You discussed the benefits of a supplemental supply for a water utility. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Could you describe just briefly what those benefits are?
Yes, if the main supply would have a break or a large demand such as a huge fire or a contamination to where that supply is shut off or unable to provide, then the secondary supply or emergency could keep the customers in service.
And I think you indicated that the connections that the water corporation currently has with Indiana American Water are limited. Is that correct?
Objection, Your Honor. Leading question.
Would you care to rephrase your question?
Certainly. During your conversation with Mr. LeVay, how did you describe the connections that Marysville-Otisco-Nabb Water Corporation has with Indiana American Water?
The connections are limited. Two of those are 1-inch connections. One is a 2-inch. The proposed connection is going to be a 4-inch.
And what are the benefits to having that larger connection?
It can provide the opportunity to offer more flow into the system, and with an 8-inch loop, it can support higher demands and eliminate pressure drops.
You and Mr. LeVay had discussed at some length the use of 250 gallons per minute as an assumption in some of your analysis. Do you recall that testimony?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, what was the purpose of that testimony, and specifically the table that was using that 250 gallon per minute assumption?
What the purpose was to show how under a higher demand than normal usage, a pressure drop would be reduced by the larger main because you have a higher volume of flow there that can help sustain flows when there's a higher demand. And it doesn't have to be a fire flow. It could be a higher domestic demand. It could be, a period where people are watering their gardens, a higher demand. The pressure drops would be less, and it would maintain service for the customers better.
Okay. And would your model have shown that using a number other than 250 gallons per minute?
Objection,
Absolutely. That's
leading.
why I said it was arbitrary.
Your Honor, I'm sorry. Objection to the question is leading.
I'm going to overrule the objection. He was responding.
Yes. As I stated, it was arbitrary. A value of 100 gallons per minute could have been used, and it would showed similar positive results.
Thank you. I have no further questions on redirect.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. You may be excused. And at this time, we will take a 5-minute break. If someone needs to use the restrooms, out here, I don't know if the codes are, sometimes you have to put in a code, sometimes you don't. If you do, I think it's 0124.
It's supposed to be the month and
believe it is.
Yeah.
Okay, which version is okay, thank you.
Okay.
No, just Mr. Parks's testimony, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Let's go back on the record. Anything further from petitioner, Mr. Craig?
No, Your Honor, petitioner rests.
Thank you. Mr. LeVay.
Thank you, Your Honor. We'd like to present Mr. Parks' testimony, which is public exhibit numbers 2 and 5, and then I'll go ahead and ask Mr. Parks questions.
One moment, Mr. LeVay.
Yes.
Mr. Parks, will you please stand and raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you will provide today will be the truth and nothing but the truth? I do. Thank you. You may be seated. You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Would you state your name for the record, please?
James T. Parks.
Would you make sure that... I was about to say you should put the microphone closer to you. Mr. Parks, who do you work for and in what capacity?
I work for the OUCC, and I'm a senior engineer, utility analyst.
Mr. Parks, do you have what's been marked in front of you as public exhibit number 2 and public exhibit number 5?
Yeah, actually, it's number 4.
Number 4, I apologize. Do you have any changes to public exhibit number 5?
Number 4. No changes.
Or number 4, excuse me. Do you have any changes to public exhibit number 2?
Yes, on page 26, line 13. The line reads, existing 4-inch main on Fox Road that was installed in 1988 is incorrectly identified as a 3-inch main depicted by a yellow line, and it should be, is incorrectly identified as a 2-inch main, yellow line.
Okay, and you have...
So the correction is substituting 2 for 3.
Okay, and you dated and initialed that change?
Yes.
Okay. With that change, do you adopt public exhibit numbers 2 and 4 as your testimony?
I do.
Your Honor, the OECC would like to offer the testimony of Mr. Parks, public exhibit number 2, and the supplemental testimony of James Parks, public exhibit number 4.
No objection.
Thank you. Then public exhibits 2 and 4 are admitted into evidence.
Thank you, Your Honor, and the witness is tendered for cross-examination.
Thank you. Mr. Craig?
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Parks, the OUCC recommends that the Commission approve Marysville-Otisco-Nabb Water Corporation's request for financing authority for a new 300,000-gallon tank. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And the OUCC also recommends approval for the booster station upgrades described by the Water Corporation?
That's also correct.
The OUCC, however, recommends against approving the Water Corporation's request for an 8-inch main extension near Charlestown, Indiana.
That's correct.
And the OUCC instead recommends that the Commission approve financing for the Water Corporation to install 10,500 feet of 12-inch water main along State Road 3.
That is not correct.
Okay. What is the OUCC's alternative recommendation then?
The second project, Phase 1B, which is the water main, I think you had it correct when you called it a main extension.
Yes.
That's our position. It's a main extension to serve development, and that should be funded by developers. There is a lower cost alternative if the goal is to have an emergency supply 100% from Indiana American's Charlestown system. And that cheaper alternative is to install the rest of the 12-inch line. And that line was approved in rates in 2003 or 4. They requested funding. It was just an extension. So you would have a 12-inch main between Stucker Fork Supply and Indiana American Supply. It would be a backbone of the system. And what I indicated in my testimony was that there's cheaper alternatives to provide 100% supply. But I don't have a recommendation at this time to do that other project.
Okay.
And there's no money. We didn't include any money to do that.
So in evaluating the alternative you've just described, and I'm going to direct you to page 2 of your pre-filed testimony, Exhibit 2, I believe it is.
Okay. What page?
Page 2. And specifically directing your attention to lines 8 through 9. And you testify, beginning about halfway through line 8, quote, "There are several other lower cost alternatives that would achieve the same objective of allowing flexibility as the water supplier." Did I read that correctly?
That's correct.
Okay. And so the alternative that OUCC has described addresses only the objective of allowing flexibility as the water supplier?
Well, I don't believe they need 100% backup supply. So I disagree with that premise. And that's what was in the preliminary engineering report by Commonwealth. The stated purpose of Project 1B, which is the 8-inch water main, is to provide 100% backup. I don't know of any utilities that have 100% backup. There are interconnections, but nobody goes to that kind of standard of 100% redundancy.
But the alternative you've described, or the OUCC has described in your testimony, it does allow flexibility as the water supplier, correct?
That's correct.
But that alternative does not address other issues with the system, including water leaks?
No, I think it would address water leaks. The original line off the booster station is 6-inch asbestos cement. They haven't made that pipe for a long time. It's the oldest pipe in the system. And in fact, Project 1A, which includes the booster station, includes variable frequency drives. And the idea is you don't want to increase the pressure when you first turn on the pumps. You don't want to have high pressures, which will cause water main breaks. So actually your most vulnerable lines are probably the 6-inch asbestos cement in that scenario, where Stucker Fork is down and you have to rely on Indiana American, and you kick those pumps on, 6-inch pipes are more likely to break because they're put in the 60s. They're asbestos cement, and this alternative would have a brand new 12-inch PVC pipe, so the pressure would be less. Pressure lost through a 12-inch pipe is less which means you need less pressure from your pumps to push the same flow north.
And,
So I don't know if that answered the question.
and when you say it would be less pressure, to what alternative are you comparing that?
This is the 12-inch main along State Road 3, which completes that backbone. Rather than have a small 6-inch main, you would make it all 12-inch, and the pressure loss for the flow you want to deliver is going to be less with a larger main.
Now you've reviewed, you referred to reviewing Commonwealth Engineering's report, correct?
That's correct.
And you've also reviewed HWC's testimony, specifically Mr. Eric Smith's testimony.
That's correct.
And HWC and specifically Mr. Smith, both in his pre-filed testimony today, described certain system benefits from the proposed 8-inch main that Marysville-Otisco-Nabb Water Corporation is seeking approval to build, correct?
That's correct.
And that would include, and that alternative does improve the pressure in certain areas of the system?
His model in his supplemental testimony shows pressures doubling, going up to 222 psi in the system. And that's right around that booster station, primarily in that area, the area of older mains. And the pipe that they have that was installed back then, it's called SDR-21 pipe or SDR-26 pipe. SDR-26 only has 160 psi working pressure, and the model is showing it's going to go to 222. You'll bust those pipes. You'll bust the joints. If it's SDR-21 pipe, I think the working pressure is either 200. I think it's 200 on a SDR-21 pipe. So that the model results that we saw in the PER revisions, they double what Commonwealth had shown. So we have two professional engineers running models, and we have very different results.
I want to ask you a question about, and this is from your supplemental testimony, specifically on page 8, if you want to refer to it. But you expressed in your testimony a belief that the Water Corporation wants to extend the 8-inch water main to serve a new neighborhood near Charlestown, Indiana. Is that correct?
That's my opinion of that. That main would provide water to that. That's a large demand, on the furthest south portion of their system. And then in the supplemental rebuttal, this idea that there's another load at Hawks Landing, equivalent to 1,800 customers there. The one down by Charlestown is 500 customers. At Hawks Landing, it's 18. That's 2,300 customers, and their current customer base is about 2,500. We're talking about doubling their size with these two nodes that are on the very furthest south portion of their system.
Okay. Now, but in terms of the needs of this potential new neighborhood in Charlestown, have you reviewed Mr. Smith's supplemental rebuttal testimony filed June 27th of this year?
I have.
And do you recall that in that testimony, he states that that a metered connection with Indiana American Water and a main extension is already planned to be installed and paid for by the developer?
Right, and that came out in his supplemental rebuttal. Initially, there is no mention of that development. In the PER and Bellucci's testimony, in his rebuttal, that's a late development, an acknowledgement of it. That fifth interconnection, they already have 4 with Indiana American. That 5th one was never in the initial filing.
Okay, But do you have any reason to disagree with that supplemental rebuttal testimony?
No, I actually say in my testimony, Indiana American may be best able to serve this new subdivision because it's right on the doorstep of Indiana American's water mains, and they have a 500,000 gallon elevated storage tank just down the road. You know, there's other ways to serve this subdivision, and I realize that would take away some customers' potential from Marysville, but if you look at the cost to provide that service, what we're talking about here is I forget the price on the water main. All told, is like $6 million to bring that 8-inch water main all the way down. You know, to increase these pressures ostensibly for 100% backup supply. I looked at this, and that 100% backup supply made no sense to me. I said, this is a main extension to serve development. And we had to dig to get that information. It was not initially presented.
But whether a 100% redundancy is excessive, do you agree with Mr. Smith's testimony that the current connections to Indiana American Water are limited for Marysville-Otisco-Nabb Water Corporation?
Well, you have to remember, Charlestown initially was the supply for Marysville. Stucker Fork didn't have their treatment plant. And that switched. So for the first 30 years, the water supply from Charlestown, Indiana, pushed water north to Marysville for 30 years until that new plant came online for Stucker Fork. The usage really hasn't gone up all that much over this period of time in the last 30 years or so. We're looking at not a lot of customer growth. In fact, I have a table in my testimony that lays it out, what the customer and usage is. But I didn't do an analysis to figure out exactly how much Indiana American could provide. I mean, you'd have to do a hydraulic analysis to get to that. Is it 90%? Currently, they provide about 5% of the flow. Okay. Or 4%, I'm sorry, 4%.
So adding this additional connection, as described by Mr. Smith, that would increase the volume that could be obtained from Marysville, or could be obtained from Indiana American Water, correct?
Right, but now you're paying for another. You have a monthly charge for that setup, whether you use any water or not. So you have a fifth connection with. There will be a bill for that. You know, I'm sorry, I said whether you use it or not. If they use water through the fifth interconnection, they'll have a monthly bill for it plus the usage. So it'll go to their cost, their expenses.
But there certainly with Stucker Fork providing such a large amount of the current water, there would be a benefit to having benefit to customers to having that additional availability from Indiana American Water, wouldn't there?
Interconnections are always a good thing.
Thank you. Now, in your and I'm looking at Exhibit 4, which I think you have in front of you, specifically page 3, and in lines 6 through 8, you stated, petitioner, referring to Marysville, confirmed that completing the 12-inch water main along State Road 3 provides similar benefits of maintaining adequate system water pressures as the proposed 8-inch water main project, but at a much lower cost to ratepayers. Did I read that correctly?
That's correct.
And you cite as support for that the supplemental testimony of Eric Smith on pages 4 to 6.
That's correct.
Okay, and I don't believe Mr. Smith's supplemental testimony is in front of you, but Could I place that in front of the witness?
Let's go off the record for a moment. Yes. Okay, let's go back on the record.
Mr. Parks, I have handed you the testimony of Mr. Eric Smith. Is this the testimony you're referring to in your report?
Well, I referred to, I think, all of his, except for his supplemental rebuttal. I didn't have the benefit of reading that.
And could you identify for the commission which exhibit this is, which is on the first page?
This is, I know this is the supplemental testimony of Eric Smith, and it's from March 15th, 2024.
Thank you. And the footnote in your report references specifically pages 4 to 6 of this report. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. That's correct.
Thank you. Now, directing your attention to page 6, specifically lines 100 to 103, Mr. Smith testifies there, does he not, that the 12-inch main will, quote, not provide the same long-term benefit and savings as the 8-inch loop because it does not allow for the replacement of water mains that will require future maintenance, repair, and replacement. Did I read that correctly?
You read that correctly.
So Mr. Smith does not necessarily agree, as you indicated in your report, that the 12-inch main extension suggested as an alternative by OUCC is the most economical long-term solution, does he?
Well, he cites the cost, $3,942,000 for that 12-inch main. And remember, the 8-inch main, he had a cost that went up to $6,997,216. The ask is for about a $4 million construction cost, not the almost $7 million. So this cost here is inflated. This main extent, this 12-inch main was estimated to cost like $342,000 in 2003. So 20 years ago, it was supposed to cost $342,000, and now he's saying it's almost $4 million. I don't agree with that cost. I think it should come down, and I have in my testimony, it's probably overstated by about 42%, which is what the other one was overstated, given what they've asked for from IFA for financing.
Have you, so what's your calculation of what the 12-inch main extension alternative would cost?
I don't remember if I put a cost estimate on that. It'd It'd be in my initial, my case in chief. If you could give me a minute,
Certainly.
if, there's quite a number of pages here, and I don't recall if I made a cost calculation on that. I'm not seeing a cost estimate that I prepared on that, so I don't think I did.
Okay. But nevertheless, it is Mr. Smith's testimony that the 8-inch main extension proposed by the Water Corporation would have additional system benefits beyond those from the alternative proposed by OUCC, correct?
That's his testimony, but the 12-inch line would have benefits as well. You'd be replacing your oldest 6-inch asbestos cement water mains. So there's a benefit there, and you would be lowering those pressures going north, that if they're allowed to go up to 222, it's gonna bust pipes. So just by that one 10,500 foot, it's a couple miles, just by completing that project, which was funded 20 years ago and never done, you improve system pressures and you replace some of your oldest mains. The mains on the project 1B, some of those mains were put in 1988. They're 20 years younger.
Do you disagree that there would be a benefit to the system of replacing those mains?
84% of the pipe in this system is undersized, less than 6-inch. 84% of it. You know, it's like 118 miles. And the issue is figuring out which pipes you're going to do as a priority. You can't replace everything. If you replaced all your undersized mains and all your PVC, the old PVC pipe, it cost over $100 million. So you have to balance that cost to ratepayers with the benefits that you're going to get from changing it out, and you have to have an orderly process through an asset management plan and a prioritization to figure out which pipes to do. In my opinion, this project is to serve the one subdivision, which I have in my testimony. I wasn't aware that this other node, Hawks Landing, existed. So it looks like there's two developers there.
Okay, but we had discussed Mr. Smith's testimony from his supplemental rebuttal that you acknowledged that a water main extension is already planned to be installed and paid for by the developer with respect to that new division, correct?
Well, that's what they're calling the fifth interconnection with Indiana American and the pipe that goes up to Charlestown, Memphis Road. That's separate from extending another 24,000 feet up to the water tank. That's a separate project.
Correct.
And that's the first time we've heard that they say there is a main extension and the developer is paying for that.
Okay. So if the developer is paying for this separate main extension, why does it remain your opinion that the purpose of the Water Corporation's main extension is only to serve that development?
Well, what is the purpose of the new 8-inch line in that location? It was to be 100% redundant supply, right? And I don't think that's valid. The utility is just doubling down, it looks like to me. They want their project 1B, but they haven't shown that it's the priority.
Well, Mr. Smith has described the system benefits. Would you agree?
Right, you could take any 2-inch line, PVC, put in the 70s, and show the same benefit all throughout their system. So the question is, why is this one at a significant cost? Remember, rates with all the projects, I think the rates are going up 74.5%. The revised. Initially, the ask was 63.9% rate increase. That's a significant rate increase.
And you understand those percentages are contingent on the direction of interest rates, correct?
That's right.
Now, you've talked quite a bit about the redundant water supply, and you state on page 14 of your supplemental testimony, which is Exhibit 4, I believe, that you are not aware of any water utility with a 100% backup supply, correct?
I do not know of any.
Okay, and what research did you do to support that assertion?
Well, I've been doing my job for about 10 years, looking at regulated communities. And prior to that, I was a consulting engineer and just, knowledge of the field. Water is heavy. It costs a lot to move it from one place to another place. So you'll see water treatment plants usually are going to be in the center of town, and they serve, the environs of the town. Municipalities, they serve within the town boundaries. It's not common to see water being transported cross-country and connecting to somebody else.
Okay. It's not common, but not unheard of?
Well, in supplemental rebuttal, I make this statement and nobody rebutted it and said, no, here's the list of places that are 100% supply. That there's nothing in the evidence that says, to answer your question, theoretically, yes, there could be somebody that has something like that. Most likely, it's going to be a very small system, that's closely, nearby somebody else.
Mr. Parks, your pre-filed testimony, Exhibit 2, criticizes several errors in Commonwealth Engineers' preliminary engineering report, correct?
That's correct.
The Water Corporation engaged a new engineering firm, HWC, correct?
That's correct.
And HWC acknowledged and corrected many errors in the Commonwealth PER, correct?
That's correct. I think the replacement of the engineer, that occurred before Mr. Smith, I think he said he was retained in December. I know the proposals, request for proposals or qualifications went out in, I think, November, and they were selected in December. I filed testimony in January, so it predated my testimony.
Okay, but you have had an opportunity to review all of Mr. Smith's testimony.
I have, yes.
And you don't have any reason to believe HWC did not correct the errors in Commonwealth's report, do you?
Well, I state in my supplemental testimony that I don't know if he's corrected it. In fact, on the cross-examination, the water main on Fox Road is still shown as a 2-inch, and it's a 4-inch, according to the design drawings. And I understand that designs don't always go through exactly. Water mains are pretty simple. And we ask for as-built, they don't have them. We ask for the design drawings. In the absence of as-built, my experience is that's probably what's there. They just didn't do the record drawings. So in my opinion, the system map is still incorrect. It still shows a 2-inch main, which it's probably a 4-inch. And during my site visit with the superintendent, Mr. Masingo, I have a marked up sheet where he indicated those were 4-inch lines.
Okay. Did you submit that sheet with your testimony?
I did not.
Okay. And did you independently verify the size of the lines on Fox Road?
We tried to ask for as-built drawings and ask for design in the absence of it. If you look at the various drawings of their water system, the color maps that are in the PER, the revised PER, I think it's in his supplemental testimony, you will notice the color of the lines change. Commonwealth originally showed a gap. They showed 2 dead ends, and that doesn't exist. It was a continuous loop already. So.
And those were corrections HWC made, correct?
They did, they acknowledged those and they corrected them. The one big error was the 12-inch line. They did not have it going far enough south. It goes to Harry Hughes Road. They also didn't have the 8-inch line on Harry Hughes Road and Possum Trot Road. They also had the water tower in the wrong location. They showed the wrong connection point down into Charlestown.
And just to clarify your testimony, you keep saying, when you say they, you mean Commonwealth?
No, this would have been Hannon, Waggle, and Klein, HWC. But I don't know if they corrected everything. In fact, just back to my point, the 2-inch water main on Fox Road is actually a 4, and it's still in the model apparently as a much smaller line.
And again, your basis for that is a marked up sheet that you have from talking with the water superintendent?
Partially. The design drawing by Gove Associates in 1988 shows a 4-inch main there.
Okay. But you're not able to independently dispute Mr. Smith's testimony other than the design drawings, which may or may not, which I think you've acknowledged may or may not like the current.
Well, the way to settle this.
I'm sorry, I'm objecting to the question because it's a little open-ended. I dispute Mr. Smith's testimony. I don't know precisely what part of Mr. Smith's testimony you're referring to in that question.
Just to clarify, if I may respond, Your Honor.
Yes.
I was speaking specifically about the dispute over whether the main Fox Road was 2-inch or 4-inch.
Objection overruled. He can respond.
Can you ask your question again?
Certainly. So I think you've indicated that the basis for your disagreement with HWC's marking the main on Fox Road is 2-inch is first the design drawing, correct?
Well, first was my site visit in December where the superintendent indicated that was a 4-inch.
Okay.
And the second was we tried to get confirmation because of the errors on the map, because you need to present testimony or evidence, right? So the best evidence would be as-built. If you don't have them, what are the design drawings? And the design drawings show a 4-inch, not 2-inch.
Just turning back to this idea of a redundant water supply, is it your testimony that customers would not benefit from the potential for additional supply from Indiana American Water?
I don't believe the rate increase of 63.9% or 74.5%, whatever it is, balances any kind of benefit they would get from that.
Okay. So looking at that benefit alone, you don't think the rate increase is justified?
I do not. And I recommend that the commission deny Project 1B, the 8-inch water main.
But you don't deny that customers benefit from a reliable backup supply?
I would agree with that, yeah.
Okay. No further questions, Your Honor.
Redirect, Mr. LeVay.
Thank you, Your Honor. You answered just the question, do the customers benefit from reliable backup supply? Do you think that this utility right now does not have a reliable backup supply?
No, I believe they're in a good position, really, because they have 2 suppliers. The Indiana American system, they just expanded and put in a brand new water treatment plant. And I know they're putting in an 8-inch main at that Danbury Oaks, that where they're going to tap off of. You know, to have them as a backup supply, and they've always had Charlestown. That was the initial supplier. And so having two utilities, being able to provide, that's a great benefit to them. Most utilities don't have that.
Thank you, Mr. Parks. No further redirect, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Parks. You may be excused. Let's go off the record for a moment. And then you want to offer your additional evidence, I assume.
Yes, Your Honor. May I approach the court reporter just to make sure
Yes.
I got all the numbers right?
Okay, let's go back on the record. Mr. LeVay?
Thank you, Your Honor. Next, the OCC would like to offer the pre-filed testimony of Tom Malin, Public Exhibit Number 1, including attachments. Public Exhibit Number 3, the pre-filed testimony of Sean Dellinger with attachments. And then Public Exhibit Number 5, the pre-filed supplemental testimony of Thomas Malin. And finally, Public Exhibit Number 6, which is the OUCC's response to the docket entry issued on July 23rd.
Any objections?
No objection.
Thank you. Then Public's Exhibits 1, 3, 5, and 6 are admitted into evidence.
Thank you, Your Honor. And with that, nothing further from the OUCC.
Thank you. And have the parties discussed proposed orders in this cause?
Yes, Your Honor, I believe those dates are included in the procedural schedule for this case.
Okay, and you intend to keep those?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay,
Yes, Your Honor.
then we're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.